I'm Eric Parker. This morning on CT21, a car theft taken to another level as a vehicle is stolen with a child inside it in Wolcott. We're looking at what's being done to try to shut down these crimes that are plaguing communities around Connecticut. And how will a shortage of truck drivers impact your summer? We're getting insight into that. Plus, foster moms. On this Mother's Day, we're paying tribute to those who step up to fill an important role in the life of a child who's not their own. It's all this Sunday, May the 9th. CT21 starts right now.
From Channel 3, this is Connecticut's most watched current affairs program, CT21, with Eric Parker. Sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning. What can be done to stop or at least slow down the thefts of cars from driveways, parking lots, and gas stations all across the state? A bill that just passed by a narrow vote in the Judiciary Committee at the General Assembly would make it a felony for an adult to get a child to steal a car, and it also calls for the use of GPS tracking devices for juveniles who are arrested more than once for stealing cars. Here to talk about those provisions and others in the bill is State Representative Craig Fishbein. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee. Representative Fishbein, we appreciate you being here with us this morning. Tell us about this bill. You support it. Why?
Yes, sir. It's HB 6669. The bill that we have before us is really a stripped-down version of the bill that was originally submitted, but representations were made that that bill would ultimately make it out of committee, so we did strip it down to what we have presently. In addition to the things that you pointed out, there's a provision in our existing law which allows for a police officer to petition a court to detain a youth if they are arrested for stealing a car. And part of this bill has to do with examining, is that tool being used by law enforcement? Are judges overruling that? That's another very important component of that. My understanding is that the judicial branch presently does not store those statistics. I think that's an important thing to know. Troubling under this, when we had the public hearing on this matter, a mother from the inner city came to us and she said that stealing a car today is a rite of passage for a child. Now, when I was growing up, a rite of passage was skinny dipping in your neighbor's pool, not stealing a car. So, very troubling what's going on. And I think that this bill is at least is a step forward should it get called in the House, which is doubtful really at this point.
Now, certainly, like you say, troubling all around that this is happening. But we talked about this bill several months ago when it was first proposed. And this is very different from what we talked about then. We were talking about juveniles being charged as adults. We were talking about a lot of serious consequences. Now we're talking about adults can't ask young people to steal a car or they'll be in big trouble. And this GPS devices. Is this just the best you could possibly get out of committee? Why are we talking about this now?
Yes, I believe that is the best that we can get out of committee. And quite frankly, even this watered down bill, it was 21-17. Most of the Democrats on the committee voted against the bill. Why? I don't know. Maybe they want to support that rite of passage that some believe to be appropriate. One of the things also this bill has to do with is if a youth has been adjudicated already of stealing a car and they steal another car or steal a gun, that those matters would be investigated by DCF, which is something that hasn't been anticipated in other legislation before us. And I think it's important because, things start at the home. And certainly DCF can get involved, see if there's services that are available to the family, but something has to be done here. This bill, although watered down, is a step in the right direction, but nowhere near what I would have.
All right, so you said you weren't sure why Democrats would vote against it. Well, we have the answer for you. We had asked Representative Robyn Porter to be on the show today. She had committed to being here, but had a last-minute conflict. We do have some of her testimony, and she voted against this bill, and she talks about why. So let's listen to that, and then I'll have you react on the other side.
We have been dealing with this issue in our communities for as long as I've been alive and prior to that. So half a century plus that I can speak of. it doesn't become a problem that we need to do something about in the means of passing laws until it does trickle into our suburban neighbors' communities. And that's really disturbing to me. I want to say that the other thing that bothers me is that, you know, there are Black kids, brown kids, white kids, all kids. This is childhood behavior. So it's not a matter of it just being poor kids that are committing these crimes, because some of these kids are rich, some of them are white. But we know that this country, this state does not, you know, they don't prosecute people the same, right? There are racial disparities in sentencing, in the way we charge people. And if you are poor, you can't afford a lawyer. So now you have to depend on a public defender. And nothing against public defenders, but we know they're all overworked. It's not the same as having a paid attorney. We also know that, you know, the discretion given by judges are doled out differently. The entire justice system, the scales are not equal. And this is what concerns me about us creating a new law within this legislation as well. I would like to deal with the root problem, because this is rooted and grounded in the pandemic with the uptick. And even with the uptick, Connecticut is still at the lower end of the percentage nationwide when it comes to these car thefts and break-ins. So I will be voting in opposition to this bill. I encourage my colleagues to vote against it. And let's get back to the table and figure out how we help these kids for real, because I don't see this as being an answer to the problem. I actually see it being something that will exacerbate the problem. These kids touch the system once as juveniles. They have a very high percentage rate of ending up in the adult system and in adult prison. And I think the one thing that we said throughout the conversation on juveniles during this committee meeting is that we want to make sure that we are helping these kids and that we are providing them a trajectory out of trouble and into a good life, something that will be positive, not just for them and their families, but for the community and this state as a whole. And I just, it's a little bit of a bellyache that we've landed here and that we're actually going to do this. And I don't see it as the right thing to do in order to respond to people that I think we need to be educating more about what the root cause is and how we really and effectively deal with what's going on.
All right, so that's what she had to say, Representative Fishbein. So she made a couple of points. She said it's really a big issue now because it's spilled over into the suburbs. She's had it in her community her whole life, representing Hamden and New Haven. She also says it's better to help these young people rather than punish them. What's your reaction? Those are the big arguments.
Yeah, those are the public policy. And I believe actually that this bill would help those youth. So we look at Section 1, if an adult is enticing a youth to steal a car, then you punish the adult. It's not punishing the youth. So I disagree with Representative Porter's analysis of the bill. Also, if a child has stolen one car, that's a really bad thing. And if they steal another car or they steal a gun, what's wrong with DCF doing an investigation? What's wrong with that child being monitored by GPS because they are a repeat offender? And what's wrong with the court actually looking at the numbers of the amount of times that judges are perhaps letting these children go back out in the street to steal more cars? There's nothing wrong in this bill.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being with us on this Sunday morning. As you said yourself, you think it might be unlikely to come to a vote, but we promised last time and we'll promise again to continue to follow this issue. Certainly it is in the headlines. There's no doubt about that. This issue of car theft is in the headlines, and whatever happens up at the General Assembly, we will be following it. Representative Craig Fishbein represents Cheshire and Wallingford. We appreciate a few minutes with you, and thank you for being with us this morning. Coming up later in our broadcast, we're introducing you to a woman who has stepped up to help care for other people's children. She talks about her important role as a foster mom. And next, how could you be impacted by a shortage of truck drivers? We'll explain when we come back.